You know you're capable of more. You've always known. Not arrogantly, not in the way that needs to be said out loud or validated by anyone else. Just quietly, privately, like a frequency you can hear that nobody around you seems to be picking up. A sense that the life you're living is a smaller version of the life you're supposed to be living. That somewhere between who you are and who you could become, something got lost, or stalled, or never quite started the way it was supposed to. And the worst part isn't the gap itself. The worst part is that you can't fully explain it, can't point to the exact moment it happened, can't tell people what's wrong because nothing is wrong, not exactly. And yet something is. Something that feels like waiting. Like a room where the furniture is arranged around a chair that's never been sat in. Welcome to Thought Paradox. Today we're talking about one of the most specific and least examined forms of human suffering. Not failure, not loss, not grief in any of its recognizable shapes. The quiet devastation of feeling like you are not becoming what you were meant to become. And why that feeling, as real as it is, might not mean what you think it means. Let's name this precisely. Because the feeling of wasting your potential is not one thing. It's a composite, a layered experience that gets compressed into a single phrase that doesn't fully capture what's actually happening inside it. There's the awareness of capacity, the genuine, accurate sense that you are capable of things you are not currently doing, that your intelligence, your creativity, your depth of feeling, your particular way of seeing the world has not yet found its full expression. That part is often true. It's not delusion, it's not ego, it's a real read of a real gap. There's the accumulated weight of unlaunched things. The projects begun and abandoned, the ideas that lived in notebooks and never left them, the versions of yourself you started building and then quietly dismantled before anyone could see. Each one of those carries a small residue of self-betrayal, and over time, those residues compound. And underneath both of those, there's something older and less rational. A voice, sometimes quiet, sometimes not, that has decided the gap between capacity and output is not circumstantial. It's personal. I'm not doing the thing because something is wrong with me, because I'm lazy, or afraid, or fundamentally, constitutionally incapable of the follow-through that the people who actually make things seem to have. That voice is not telling you the truth. But it is telling you something. And understanding what it's actually saying, beneath the self-indictment, is where this video lives. There is never one reason for this feeling, but there are patterns. And most people who carry this weight will recognize themselves in more than one of them. Reason 1. You confuse potential with a destination. The word potential implies a destination. A place you're supposed to arrive at, a finished version of yourself that, once reached, will confirm that you didn't waste what you were given. But potential isn't a place, it's a direction. And the belief that there is a specific, identifiable thing you're supposed to be doing, a calling, a purpose, a singular expression of your capacity that you simply haven't found yet, is one of the most paralyzing ideas in modern psychology. Because while you're waiting to identify the right thing, you're not doing anything. And not doing anything, over time, starts to feel exactly like wasting your potential. The waiting becomes the waste. Reason 2. Fear of the attempt. Here's the thing nobody says directly enough. Not starting is safer than starting and failing. An unwritten book cannot be rejected. An unlaunched business cannot fail. A relationship not pursued cannot end. A version of yourself not attempted cannot be found insufficient. The potential, as long as it remains potential, is perfect, intact, untested, still carrying the full weight of everything it could be. The moment you attempt it, you risk finding out it's less than you imagined, and for many people, particularly people who have built significant parts of their identity around being capable, that risk is existentially threatening. What if I try fully, and it turns out I'm not who I thought I was? That question doesn't get asked consciously, but it runs every decision. Not starting is not laziness. It is a sophisticated act of self-protection, and understanding it that way, without excusing it, is the first step towards something different. Reason 3. You're comparing your interior to everyone else's exterior. The gap between who you are and who you think you should be is almost never measured against reality. It's measured against a curated highlight reel. The person whose career looks effortlessly successful from the outside. The artist whose output seems natural and prolific. The entrepreneur whose story gets told in the version that skips the 8 years of invisible struggle before the thing that worked. You are comparing your full interior, the doubt, the paralysis, the false starts, the 2 a.m. questions, against everyone else's exterior. And the gap you perceive is not the gap that actually exists. It is the gap between your reality and their performance of reality. That gap will always be devastating, because it is not real. Reason 4. The identity was built around potential, not output. This one is the most important and the least talked about. Many high-capacity people, particularly those who were identified as gifted, talented, or exceptional early in life, built their identity around what they were going to do, not what they did. What they were going to do. And that identity, the promising one, the one with potential, is comfortable in a particular way. Because potential is safe. Potential is admired. Potential makes people lean in and say, I can't wait to see what you do. Output is different. Output is exposed. Output can be measured and found wanting. Output puts the promise to the test. And so some people, unconsciously, structurally, remain in a perpetual state of becoming, always about to, always almost, always one more piece of preparation away from beginning, because beginning means the era of pure potential ends, and they don't know who they are without it. Reason 5. You're waiting for the right conditions. The right time, the right circumstances, the right level of readiness. When the anxiety settles, when the finances stabilize, when life gets a little less complicated, when you feel more confident, when you know enough, when you're sure. Here is the uncomfortable truth about the right conditions. They do not arrive, not in the way you're imagining, not in a way that removes the uncertainty, the risk, the fear of being insufficient. The people who make things do not do so because the conditions became right. They do so in the wrong conditions, with the wrong level of readiness, before they feel sure. The condition you're waiting for is a feeling, and that feeling is not a prerequisite for beginning. It is, at best, a byproduct of it.
Here's the reframe that changes everything. The feeling of wasting your potential is not evidence that you are wasting your potential. It is evidence that something in you is alive. Dead things don't ache. The ache, the specific, persistent, low-grade grief of the unlived life pressing against the walls of the life you're actually living, that is not the sound of failure. That is the sound of a self that hasn't given up, that still believes in the gap. that still holds the image of who you could become with enough fidelity to feel the distance from it. That ache is not your enemy. It is, if you learn to listen to it correctly, the most honest navigation system you have. The question is not, why do I feel like I'm wasting my potential? The question is, what specifically does this feeling want me to move toward? Not in the abstract, not in the grand, sweeping life purpose sense, but concretely, today, in the next hour. What is the smallest possible movement in the direction of the thing? Not the finished thing, not the launched thing, not the thing that confirms you are who you thought you were. The next sentence, the first sketch, the email you've been not sending, the conversation you've been avoiding having with yourself. The smallest true step. That is where the feeling is pointing. There is a concept from the work of researcher and author James Clear that is worth sitting with here. He draws a distinction between outcome-based identity and process-based identity. Outcome-based identity says, I am someone who wrote a book. I am someone who built a business. I am someone who achieved the thing. Process-based identity says, I am someone who writes. I am someone who builds. I am someone who does the thing, imperfectly, inconsistently, in small increments, but does it. The person waiting to feel like their potential is being honored is almost always operating from outcome-based identity. They are waiting to become the finished version of themselves before they start acting like that person. But identity doesn't work that way. You don't write the book and then become a writer. You write badly, slowly, inconsistently, and through that writing, the identity of writer gradually becomes true. The action precedes the identity, not the other way around. And this reframe, as simple as it sounds, dissolves one of the most paralyzing aspects of the wasted potential feeling. Because if you are waiting to feel ready, to feel worthy, to feel like the person who deserves to attempt the thing, you will wait indefinitely. But if you shift the question from, am I ready to do this, to, what does someone who does this actually do today? The answer is almost always something small enough to begin right now.
Let's talk about debt. Not financial debt. The other kind. The debt that accumulates when you know, really know, in the part of you that doesn't lie, that you have been playing smaller than you are capable of. Not because life didn't hand you obstacles. It did. They were real. Not because fear wasn't justified. It was. The risk is real. But because somewhere in the calculus of safety and exposure, of comfort and risk, of who you are and who you might become, you chose the smaller version. Again, and again, and again. And every time you chose it, a small part of you noticed, filed it, added it to a ledger that you review, usually involuntarily, usually at the worst times. That ledger is the feeling of wasted potential. You cannot pay that debt backward. The years spent waiting are spent. The unlaunched things remain unlaunched. The version of yourself that might have existed by now, if you had started then, that version is not available. But here is what is available. The debt stops accumulating the moment you begin. Not the moment you succeed. Not the moment the thing is finished or launched or validated or recognized. The moment you take the smallest, honest step toward the thing you've been not doing. That moment, unremarkable, unglamorous, probably terrifying, is the moment the ledger changes.
You know you're capable of more. That knowing is not comfortable. It was never designed to be. It is a feature of a self that hasn't settled, that still holds a standard for itself that the current life hasn't met, that still believes, even after everything, that the gap can close. That belief is not a torment. It is a gift. The cruelest possible version of this life is not one where you try and fall short. It is one where you arrive at the end of it with the potential still intact, still theoretical, still perfect, still untested. And you realize, too late for it to change anything, that the potential was never the thing. The attempt was. You don't have to know where it leads. You don't have to feel ready. You don't have to have solved the fear or the doubt or the question of whether you're the person for the thing you keep feeling called toward. You just have to take the next step that's honest, the one you've been not taking, today. Not because the conditions are right, because you are tired, genuinely, bone-deeply tired, of living in the smaller version. I'm Thought Paradox. If this one moved something that's been still for too long, share it with someone who needed the push. See you in the next one.